Hey everybody, welcome back to another painting tutorial from Swagins a Game. For this week, we are going to be covering how I paint desert bases for my miniatures. This could be used for Tatooine or any other desert that you choose. So the first thing you'll need is obviously a base. You'll need a brush to apply your paint and your earth texture, a dry brush to do some dry brushing. I prefer these e.l.f. makeup brushes. You can get them at basically any dollar store. Or, yeah, you probably get them at a dollar store or any grocery store. They're usually about $1 or $2, so they're super inexpensive, and they are amazing. For paints, you'll need Vallejo Game Color Khaki, Vallejo Model Color Brown Sand, Vallejo Game Color Bone White, Vallejo Model Color Buff, Seraphim Sepia for a wash from Citadel, and Vallejo Earth Texture Desert Sand. And you'll want to prime your base. Color of your choosing, I went with gray. You can do gray, you can do black. But the first thing you're going to do is go ahead and throw down a base layer or two. Oops, let me get this in there. Base layer or two of the Vallejo Model Color Brown Sand. And that's just to cover the base here. That's just in case some of the texture pops off or whatever. You'll see this underneath it. If you want to add rocks, you can add them now, you can add them later. The earth texture will actually work as almost a glue, so you can put them down on top of the earth texture. You can put them now with some super glue if you want. Totally up to you. I'm going to leave mine rockless, but I'm going to go ahead and pop down 2 layers of this brown sand and show you what that looks like. So we'll come back in just a few minutes. Okay, so now that the base coat has dried, we're going to go ahead and start to put on the Vallejo texture paint. And for this, grab a brush that you don't care about and start putting it all over the base. And what I like to do to give different variations is to do a stippling, or basically a dab motion. You can come in and go super smooth with it, but with this stippling motion, what it'll do is it'll give different variations of the sand without having to come in and sculpt it. You can do that. That's definitely an option, but that takes some time. So just go ahead and throw on your base, your texture paint. Here is, if you want to put on any sort of rocks, you can go ahead and put them on now. And the texture paint, once it dries, will basically turn into like a glue. You could have put them on before the texture paint and used super glue, or put them on inside the texture paint. Either way, throw your texture paint on. Change it and make it, give it some undulations and stuff. If you see, you can see how it has a few different levels right there. Give this a little while to dry. It'll probably take about an hour or two, depending on how dry you want it to be. But just let it hang out, and then we will come back and start doing some painting. Okay, so now that the base has had a few hours to dry from the basing paste, we're going to apply a wash of Citadel's Seraphim Sepia. And that's going to go over the entire base. If you want it to be, the contrast to be lighter, you can water down the Seraphim Sepia with a few drops of Lamy Medium. The more medium you put in, the less impact the shade is going to have on your base. If you want it to be kind of darker and the crevices to be deeper, you can come back after the first wash dries and apply a second one and even a third if you want to. I'm just going to do one, so we're just going to come right in here and do this entire face with just Seraphim Sepia. I need a little bit more on my palette. And we'll go ahead and let that, that's what it looks like for right now. So we'll go ahead and let that dry for about 20 to 30 minutes and come back with some dry brushing. Okay, so now that the base has had about a half an hour to dry, we're going to come in and do some dry brushing to pick out the raised areas of the texture paste that we put down. And I'm going to start by going back with the Vallejo brown sand, and we're just going to get a little bit on our palette. Remove most of the paint from the brush and just go back and forth hitting the raised areas. Then I'm going to go ahead and hit with some Vallejo Game Color Khaki and do the same thing. I'm not even cleaning off my brush. I'm going to let all this paint kind of mix in together on the brush so that it looks more natural on the base. And again, just this is a little bit lighter of a dry brush, and it might not show up much on the camera, but in person you'll be able to tell. Now I'm going to come in and do Vallejo Model Color Buff. Again, do the exact same thing. And Buff is a little bit more yellow, so it's gonna hit a lot of those raised areas and really look like it gave it a sun bleached appearance, which is what you kind of want, unless you obviously want to go a little bit darker. And then for my last highlight, I'm gonna go ahead and do Vallejo Game Color Bone White. I actually think I want it to be a little bit lighter, so I'm going to come in with just another coat of the Bone White. I think that looks all right there. And then for the last step, I have some of these Army Painter grass tufts. So I'm just going to grab one of the grass tufts, throw just a dab of super glue, there we go. And I'll even brush it just a little bit to make it kind of stand up. There we go. And so I'll come back, I'll paint the rim of the base black. You can obviously paint that any color that you choose. Black is usually what I go with, but you can do like a brown. You could actually do that brown sand if you wanted it to kind of look similar, or you can come in with the black like I do it, but that's gonna be it. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share, comment, all those usual YouTube things. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.